The office manager explicitly was Jason Callahan, and very well thought out. I mean, this was after many discussions with the board and co-chairs and whatever about what do we really want an office to do. Okay, partisan managerial sense. What tasks should always get done, no matter what, regardless of what anybody else thinks is important or unimportant. Pretty much in existence to this day, you know, even though now it's in Pittsburgh and it's an independent contractor, that contract today is still, and it is, it's basically how to handle communications, you know, all the things that just keep you organized. And I think that was probably a good idea.
Now, when you first came aboard in the office was up here in the district, right?
Yeah, we got kicked out. Well, we had fabulous rent at that place for two reasons. Was this older guy, he wasn't interested in, you know, making a lot of money. He was just fine. He, you know, he'd had it for years. You know, it was more than just a building. And then our floor, so he never checked. Floor was actually DC laws at that time allowed. So our whole floor was actually a co-op by a woman named Judy Davis. He loved just liberal groups. I mean, she would really rent out to. We had the Palestinian, very the gay Yellow Pages, leftist writers for the Village Voice, and I thought enjoyable atmosphere. I mean, to be in with this group of people. Mm-hmm. We're all very supportive of each other. So the rent was very low. And then the guy who owned the building was corrections of downtown DC where we were located. And certainly very crime-ridden. So he sold everybody as much as he could. The new owners wanted everybody out in a month. DC law, you can kick people out in a month. And he got us. And so we heard out that we had to get out just a little before the convention.
That was, who was that? I'm trying to remember.
4 years ago. Finding a new office.
So, how did your role with the office after we hired Jason Callahan?
Here we did all this forming, getting it back in shape again. And I thought, well, we don't want this all fall apart. Because I do think one problem, and I've seen your list of questions here, what do you think are good points and weak points of the organization. I do think one, here the board, co-chairs, and we have a problem with continuity, continuing to implement things that were done earlier. You know, new people come in, they're very enthused about a specific thing. And so this was at the convention in Miami a few years ago, and all this was set up just to...
Which meant, of course, you could no longer be the independent contractor.
Right. That's exactly what we did.
So you stayed involved with the office until it moved to Pittsburgh.
Right.
Which was last year. Well, let me go back a little here. You talked, you've been sort of alternately. Have you noticed any change in the atmosphere of convention since you've been changed, or what's happened?
Well, there's been a change. And, you know, it's hard to sort out PT from the larger chain of events going on in the gay community. A big study came out that showed people are less involved than ever in organizations. Bowling, and I think we've had that problem. People are less inclined to join an organization. Structure has become more of a problem as time goes on. The chapters and the national, the way it came about, you know, 20 change that's become really cumbersome in a way. I think years are really fundamentally changed. You know,
social scientist. Do you have any thoughts as to why and why times have changed in that nature?
Not too much. I just think the job market has changed. I mean, being involved and attached to the same job for 40 years, that has sort of disappeared. the idea temporary. I think you view it as usual now for somebody to accept a job thinking this will be the next 40 years. People feel more vulnerable, more on their own. It's hit you hard, and a little more on your own, you're on your own.
So this is more than just something
Oh
in
yeah,
the community, or
I could talk about is BWMT problem. Is most of them are the same problems the whole other gay group or society as a whole, you know. And but the greatest asset with BWMT is the people in it have just a lot of heart. You know, really believe in good race relations. Really want to see things done right. Black and white, really, that's there, and I think what's always been nice at the convention, everyone that kicks in. I don't know how to explain it any more than that, but it definitely, it always happens, even in the worst of years, it happens, and that will probably last, and that's the most worthwhile thing about the organization, things about the conventions. But where they've changed is, probably most people would disagree with me on this, is I think they've become less politicized. I know people find that hard to believe, but I can remember the earliest conventions I would go, and I would go to the workshops, and these throw down, knock it out, let it all hang out. Discussions, on race stuff, or dating, or most anything, and everybody has all these stories going back to people waving the Confederate and all that, and I think that was good. I mean, if we're about furthering race relations and relating to one another, then you have to start where you're at, okay? There's this tension in society or between people, okay? And you get it out. That's where you begin and you build from. And BWMT could do that. It was good at doing that, you know what I mean? And I think that's where a lot of that camaraderie you were talking about came from. That you had people, kind of like a family, where you're going to hang together. Even though somebody else does something that just drives you crazy, you'll work it through. And I think most of the individuals in BWMT say that comes out of the convention. Over time, I think the last few years, there's been a AIDS thing and all that. The people got burned out a little bit on the intensity in the community. And I think willingness to really, emotional honesty. It's not that people want it or don't think. I just think, I think the conventions and the workshops have been kind of calmer the last few years. And
you think? I'm going to ask you later into how you've seen AIDS affect organization, and obviously we've lost. Was perhaps the main reason for this diminishing of intensity, or other? I
think that's a big part of it. I mean, it's a subtle impact, and it's odd. I look at my parents now in the late 70s, early 80s, and one of their problems is all their friends and whatever passed away. And what do you do? I mean, your anchors, ways of communicating and relating are gone. And I think with AIDS, it had two impacts. I think it really made people question whether it'll last or not, or led to anything lasting. It made people in the gay community say, well, what are we as a community? Because as a group, as quote, an organized group, you don't have people together, if you know what I mean. You can all talk about bowling. You can do that, But gay cuts across all socioeconomic levels. To think of it as a focused organization, other than that's not the best thing to hold up, a way to organize. And, so, where I was going with all that.
Well, how about AIDS?
Okay, so Yes, so one, I think it made people say, well, what do we really... And I think BWMT fit right in because they already had the thing, and I do think, especially looking at what went on with the local chapters, a lot of the chapter family-oriented, and I remember when I was doing a lot of this traveling around with those surveys and that, more of an effort that if someone had AIDS and they had a hard time getting around, they would go pick them up, take them to the... I think the idea of friendship is friends as family set in a little more because of why. I think that was one impact. But yeah, then I think the other was just this burnout from good friends just going. You know, the disorientation, sense of loss, who's next. And of course in the earlier days, terrible people, lingering, gruesome deaths, a lot of pain. So yes, I do think people responded with more a toning down of emotional pain.
Well, what are some of your most memorable memories of either events or people that you've met in this organization? Things that have happened or some people that you've encountered really stand out?
Interesting question because, like I said, the heart side, and a lot of things that stand out to me on the heart side are people on the race relating. You know, there's this media age and focus on affirmative action, stuff like that, which is sort of a societal view of race relations. But when you get into like BWMT and actually see the one-on-one type relations, it's a little bit different. And what stands out to me, I'm not going to name any specific person, but in the moments where you're relating and across races, and you'll suddenly realize we really are friends. Just a good moment. This is what life is about, and this is one of life's moments like that. Like I said, they often happen at the convention, but also day to day, and in the local chapters too. So that's my good memory. The WMT, the organizational side, you know, with the officers and doing business and trouble with that. You want to take a break a second?
Yeah. Well, we're back. So how has being involved or being a member of this organization affected or changed your life?
Well, first, as I started out the interview, it was the way I came out. You know, it was through the local chapter and the national. And I also making friends. For my life, the way it had been up to the time I moved to D.C. 20 years ago. I mean, it was really total before that. It was the married life, the college professor, and grad quite a bit. I don't regret anything that happened at that time. But then moving to D.C. on my own, being bound to Gacy and BWT, it wasn't just a move. I mean, it was really giving up one way of life, starting a whole new one. And so BWMT was my baptism in a way. Like I said, meeting people, finding out what was going on in the scene, what it was like. And, so it changed my life quite a bit.
How do you think that being a white man has affected your experiences in the organization?
It's interesting. You're talking about my background. I grew up on a farm, very isolated. This type of place doesn't even exist. There were 64 people in my high school. All right, it was really not the little one-room schoolhouse, but close to it. And like I said, by myself most of the time. So growing up, anything concerning other ethnicities, heard the word gay or homosexual until I went to college, truly. So it was a very, very isolated life. So when I'm getting into BWMT, I was sensitive to the, like racial issues and black-white relations. But I also entered it, I think, with a certain amount of call it an ability, because it was, I had not been socialized growing up either way into thinking about like race is good or bad or whatever. It was just some way over there. And so going into BWT, you knew this was a sensitive issue, okay? So I was always standing back and looking for cues and what's going on and whatever. And so the whole white-black thing, it was interesting. So I'd look at other white guys, other black guys, and like I said, I was fortunate to just meet certain people, really just became good friends and could be honest with and talk up front with. So I just learned a lot about relating to people different, just in a general way, just like anybody would. And but the other thing I learned, which affected my relations with black people, is the issue of race, how dominant that is in our culture, and how to relate to that, how to deal with it. And one of my conclusions is that there's a lot of conflicts in there. If you talk about race, you talk about diversity, inequality, there's all implications in there that are difficult to deal with. And when you're in BWMT, you actually have to face them. You actually have to make a choice. About how you're going to deal with that. And I have learned the best way to do that is to just be straightforward with the other person. Say, maybe I'm stepping on some toes here or entering into an area I don't know, but and I found with that approach that you can learn a lot. Mm-hmm. That is what makes friends. And speaking more generally, I think even though we're supposed to be a race-sensitive organization, one of the things where it's, quote, like changed me or my thinking is still, even like white people who are just, they have the ultra commitment to, fair race relations, equality, and whatever, view the race problem differently from a black person. And quite frankly, and it's a problem with the interview, I can't get explained fully, but in some ways, white people make more out of black people do for certain circumstances. I think, and I think it's sometimes white people try so hard to be politically correct that they just muddle things up more, if you know what I mean. When just a little simple, straightforward directness is all it's needed. And so yeah, I think that's been one of my biggest things. There's a lot of white guilt out there, and I don't know how to deal with that. But I do know I've had enough honest discussions with black guys, that they're making as big a deal out of that as people are, And I think a lot of jump forward. The big area where BWMT can really its contribution in the future is getting more into broadcasting to the wider gay community, getting into how this one-on-one honesty that gets beyond all the societal notions of what race and race relations ought to be. Not to say that those are all wrong or anything, but there's more to it than that. And that's where we can stand out. I think it keeps changing. It keeps changing. I remember when we came into BWMT, racism was institutional racism. That's the way everybody did it. Which is partially correct. But then, after several years, some of the most major civil rights leaders says, no, there's problems with that, and that leads to this, and it's demeaning to black people of all responsibility. It's always changing, is what I'm saying. And I think the only to really to relate to people, say, okay, these are there, And then when you are relating to a black person, how are we going to handle that? And if they see a problem with me, they can tell them I can say it, and then go back and forth. The heart thing again, get to the heart.
Well, this kind of, maybe you partially answered the question, but what do you feel is this organization's greatest accomplishment?
Well, in an organizational sense, clearly it's
Task Force on AIDS Prevention.
Yeah. That was significant. It was first reach program, the AIDS community, and E1 to establish in a more accurate way how AIDS is operating and spreading in the black community. And then I think just just having the conventions every year, just having public display. I always remember the convention in Charlotte, where we always try to have our own area of meeting room. But that year, I forget how it came about, but we were tied in with the retired Army convention, and they were all on the same floor.
World War II veterans.
World War II veterans. And everybody was saying, it ended up being no problem. In fact, it was quite warm and fuzzy in many cases. The veterans came over to our tables and up and talked and related. Who knows what effect that had in terms of on other people. So, I think it's significant.
Well, what do you like best about the national one? What do you like least?
Best is definitely specifically meeting new people, making friends, and giving you a forum for, that still is not that easy in the United States. And it just gives you a forum for doing that. So that's what I definitely like best. I think that's why it has to continue to exist. And try to be as strong as it can be, because times can change. You can say it's not as hard being gay now 20 years ago. Racial things have improved, Because of the diversity issues, people that are different still need a BWMT. Okay. Can I take another pause?
No, that's all right.
And that will continue to be valuable, I think. I can't imagine the day ever coming, when just this innate human characteristic of relating to somebody different from you. You're always going to be helpful to have a forum or something that supports that, encourages that. So BWMT will always be useful that way.
Anything you don't like?
Well, I think, like I said earlier, I think some of the problems with BWMT are endemic in the gay community. I think the gay community, growing up gay, I think is, although maybe getting other people today have had really bad experiences, offensive, angry easily, and take it out on the wrong people. When you get into a business meeting or whatever, that anger has a way of coming out. I think we get a lot of that. One group fighting another over small things. I think the bottom line is when we were strictly an amateur club, the local chapter and the national was created basically to just have a convention. It was all warm and fuzzy, high schools and but then when it incorporated the 501c, it became business and got involved in government regulations. But I really wanted to keep the heart on just good buddies. So they wanted that. And yet there were these rules we had to follow. Like I said, and as you got older, you'd have the board do some actions. And then new co-chairs come in, and all those old things get wiped out. And it all just got more. I think the organizational side just needs a good tightening up. A good where a little more institutional memory, as I said earlier, where things that are started, even though administrations change, good projects. I can remember one of my big was we had set up we were just about to implement how the quarterly and the website would relate to each other and fit in with the bigger picture, meeting our obligations to the IRS. Because there are certain things, either your newsletter or your website status has to do certain things. Okay, so they have to be either on the website or in the quarterly. And Eric Brown and I, we had sorted all this out. Okay, we were all set to set up documents on the site that they could be downloaded, meeting all our requirements. And quarterly was going to become a little more magazine-like and give them news on the local chapters. And everybody was very interested in that plan. Would have, then the administration has changed. And we were that close to getting it done. And it just disappeared. And now I don't think anybody, invents, sabotage with things. It's just forgotten because the new people, had their own concerns. So somehow we need to either run for the board, to emphasize to them that yes, maybe you have special concerns that you want to carry out, but you're also inheriting a bunch of obligations that need to be carried out. And more emphasis on that, I think we need. And also, a few years ago, we had the Gill Foundation came in and a gay organization that helps other gay organizations become more professional, either through grants and various things. And they came in and spent a weekend with us. I think it was about 5 weeks. And they made a lot of recommendations, which we did for a while. It lasted about a year, and actually that year we ran quite well. But their main criticism was that our board meetings are too much like a committee. Okay, a lot of minor business that should be taken care of and addressed at a lower level. Some committee actually filter up and get done at board meetings. So we spend a lot of time on small details, personality clashes, whatever. It should be done at a lower level. And then the board meeting should be, all those things have been settled. If they can't be settled, then they reach the point where they are a policy decision, and the board should do it. But I think that a more professional organization is sort of what it is. But, I'm not going to point the finger at anybody. There's nobody out there saying we're not going to be an unprofessional organization. It's more of a volunteer group. All these people come in and they take on the task of being a board member, co-chair. I doubt if anybody who runs realizes how much work it is. I really don't think it does until they get into it. And it's hard to tack that on to a private life, do all that. And then, someone comes along and says, well, have you studied all the past history, all the votes that have already been done on this, and whatever, and you see a problem facing you now. You just go ahead and try to solve it there and then, rather than think of it as an ongoing thing. So, and I'm not sure we think about that, to be honest.
Well, how have you seen race relations change? I guess generally and within the organization since you've been involved.